2021 was tabbed to be the biggest season in the history of the storied National Football League, back in front of a grand stage, in front of capacity crowds, and with the longest regular season in league history. 17 games for all NFL teams. And for the Dallas Cowboys, it was filled with expectations from the jump. It also was filled with records. First team in NFL history to ever have a 4,000-yard passer, a 1,000-yard receiver, and rusher in both CeeDee Lamb and Ezekiel Elliott, and then Micah Parsons with 10-plus sacks, Trayvon Diggs with double-digit interceptions. Along with that record trend, how about Dak Prescott? 37 passing touchdowns, breaking the previous mark in a single season set by Tony Romo. He did so in the final game of the regular season. Speaking of the final game of the regular season, 22 different players found the end zone for the Dallas Cowboys in 2021. It started in the season opener, fittingly, with a 22-yard score to CeeDee Lamb, and it was capped off, also fittingly, by a 22-yard score to Jaquan Hardy as he ran it into the end zone against Philadelphia. The Cowboys, champions of the NFC East again, the first time since 2018 that they held that crown. But what did it ultimately turn into? Well, the Cowboys were bounced in the wild card round of the playoffs by the San Francisco 49ers at AT&T Stadium. So despite all of the success, what went right? What went wrong for the Dallas Cowboys in 2021? Over the next hour, me along with an expert group of panelists, of former players and DallasCowboys.com beat writers will break it down, starting with week one of the NFL season. It started with the Super Bowl champs, the Cowboys season in 2021, an opportunity lost. We talk about it right after this.
The 2021 Dallas Cowboys Year-End Special, presented by Miller Lite, is brought to you by Dr. Pepper. All the flavor you deserve without the sugar. New Dr. Pepper Zero Sugar. Ford, built for Texas, built for you. And by Miller Lite, the only beer of the Dallas Cowboys. It's Miller time. This segment is brought to you by Ford. Ford is the best in Texas.
It did not take very long for the expectations to rise and the fireworks to begin in 2021 as we break down weeks 1 through 5 of the NFL season. Welcoming in former safety Barry Church. We've got David Hellman from DallasCowboys.com. Kyle Yeoman's back with you. And gentlemen, it doesn't get any bigger than facing Tom Brady and the reigning Super Bowl champions on the road. They were hanging a banner, and the Cowboys had, of course, these lofty expectations with the return of Dak Prescott and company after his injury in 2020. And they lost the game. It was 31-29, the final score. But in the end, it really felt like a positive step forward for this Cowboys team. So, well, let's begin there. Let's talk about what happened there. How did that game kind of shape your expectations, Dave, when you looked at the 2021 team?
It sounds weird to say because they did lose the game. I learned something about myself, Barry. I believe in moral victories.
Okay.
Because that's what this was for me. And I don't know if I thought that before this game, but for me, you proved that Dak Prescott could still play at a high level coming off of that injury. And that was so big. Like, for him to go down there on banner night, complete 70% of his passes, go toe-to-toe with the GOAT. Like I said, I know they lost, but it was huge for me, just in the sense of, okay, like, by midway through the second quarter of that game, I was like, that's fine. Yeah. Dak will be okay. And I don't think you can put a price on that.
Yeah, like you said, Dave, I definitely expected this team going in to take an L. You know, I thought for sure it was going to be a 14-point loss. I was like, if we get around 10 points in a loss, that'll be cool with me. But they showed a lot. They showed a lot in that game, and Dak Prescott, like you said, was extremely efficient out there. I think we forced him to throw the ball maybe, 58 times?
Yeah, he basically gave up on
Yeah, they were just, you know what, Dak, go and do your thing. And I think he had one of his better offensive performances the entire year. With no run game, just out there slinging it left and right at the shotgun position. I mean, the guy was incredible in this game.
42 of 58, 403 yards. I mean, it just basically announced his return back to health overall.
It's a loss, but Barry, I think it was one of the top 5 games of his entire career.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
Is it the top loss maybe of his career moving
I'm
into that?
spitballing, but yeah, I think that sounds right to me. Yeah, right up there.
When you go into it, like you said, he didn't do anything in camp. I mean, he might have thrown a couple passes here and there.
We sat him down like 2 days into training camp.
Yeah, and so him to go in there with, pretty much no practice, no preseason games, and be able to throw the ball all over the yard like he did, it was a pretty amazing accomplishment.
It was also pretty impressive to see the defensive turnaround of Dan Quinn already on full display. 4 turnovers forced against the Buccaneers, 2 of which interceptions, one from Trayvon Diggs, one from Jordan Lewis of course, Tom Brady in his final NFL season. But let's move on to the Los Angeles Chargers game in Week 2. This was the first win, of course, for the Cowboys. 20-17 was the final score, a game-winning Greg Zuerlein field goal to seal it. But this was a game that really the Cowboys had a lot of adversity going into. No Michael Gallup, no Randy Gregory. DeMarcus Lawrence was out with a broken foot in practice prior to the game, and then Lyle Collins suspended for 5 weeks. So that's 4 starters, even Donovan Wilson, make it 5 starters out on that roster going into the ball game. What did this tell you about the depth of the Cowboys, the fact that they still got to win on the road?
Yeah, to me, this game came down to 2 things. It came down to the running backs. We saw that Zeke and Pollard can be kind of this thunder-lightning combination, and they proved to be the difference offensively to win the game. And defensively, like you said, the depth. We lost DeMarcus Lawrence to a broken foot, and that just shows the versatility of what Marcus Parsons was able to bring to this defense. I mean, he went from linebacker to defensive end, and what he was able to do at defensive end, not many people can. I mean, he was going against one of the top tackles in the game, and he kind of made him look like mincemeat out there. I mean, he was putting pressure on Herbert each and every down. Got to him, I believe, one time, but the guy was incredible that entire game.
So this is a season in review. We know where this season goes, right?
Absolutely.
It ended in disappointment. But I don't think it's a stretch to say these first 2 games are the most important of the entire season. Week 1, you prove that Dak is going to be okay. Like, he can still play at a high level. Week 2, everybody gets hurt, and you find out Micah Parsons can rush the passer like an all-pro. I asked Dan Quinn about this later in the season. I was like, do you think it's fair to say that you don't find out what Micah can do as quickly without Randy getting COVID, without DeMarcus breaking his foot? And he was like, yeah, we were forced to put him into a situation that maybe we would have eased him into later. True. And lo and behold, the guy's incredible at it. It's not a stretch to say he won you this game. His sack of Herbert ruined a potential touchdown drive for the Chargers and set you up to kick a game-winning field goal instead of having to go for a touchdown. Obviously, the guy ends with 13.5 sacks. Who knows when we find that out without these circumstances? So I think this was an absolutely enormous game.
He had 2 sacks, 8 total pressures. He won Rookie of the Week and I believe NFC Defensive Player of the Week in that game as well. But let's move into weeks 3 through 5. 3 straight wins for the Cowboys. 41-21 over Philadelphia, 36-28 over Carolina at AT&T Stadium, and then they turn around against the New York Giants in Week 5, exercising some demons with Dak Prescott's injury. The year prior in Week 5 against the Giants, 44-20 was that final score. Was this the best stretch that we saw from the Cowboys this season? Because it really felt like things were building.
I would have to say offensively, this was definitely a dynamic stretch. I mean, I felt like they could do no wrong, whether it's handing the ball off to Zeke and Pollard and them doing their thing, or if it's Dak Prescott just taking full control of this offense at the line of scrimmage, pointing out where he needs to go and feeding his playmakers out there. But what happened with this is, we didn't know at the time that this 3-game winning streak and this offense putting up all these ridiculous numbers, that we were doing it against, subpar teams, not, very good teams. Because we came into that Carolina game, I feel like they were undefeated at the time. Yeah. Everybody thought, all right, this is a marquee win. We get this win, we're on track. And we got the win, we blew them out. But at the end of the day, we realized Carolina just wasn't that good of a team.
See, I'm bummed to hear you say that, Barry, because what I always went back to, and you correct me if I'm wrong, you don't beat the crap out of teams like this on a week-after-week basis, no matter how sorry they are, right? I mean, 40-20 wins in the NFL just don't happen very often. And the Cowboys were stacking them on top of each other for a minute there. And you're right. I mean, Carolina wound up being a bad team. Yeah. New York, an awful team. I mean, I know Philly made the playoffs, but you never got the feeling that they were on the caliber of a contender. But, man, I think they got me. They got me because, like, you see the performances. We were talking about it before we came on. Trayvon Diggs had 4 picks in 3 games. The defense is getting the ball. The offense is doing all this fun stuff. They got me, man, because very rarely have I seen a stretch of sustained excellence like that, I don't care who it's against.
And Trayvon Diggs sustained that excellence throughout those games. You mentioned the 4 interceptions. He really emerged as a potential record-breaking season, and then, of course, he ended up as the NFL's leader in interceptions in that category. So what a fantastic run he had. He was a big part of the wins in that win streak as well. So when we come back, we take a look at week 6 and 8, where some adversity emerged, but so did the young talent on this Cowboys roster.
This segment was brought to you by Ford. Ford is the best in Texas.
Entering week 6 of the NFL season, the Dallas Cowboys had the top offense in the league, arguably the hottest defense, and a 4-1 record. However, new challenges awaited for Coach Mike McCarthy's Cowboys as a trip to Foxborough was on the docket. Bill Belichick's Patriots were waiting in what turned into being an instant classic.
They gonna fold, bro. They gonna fold. I know they're gonna fold. They're gonna have to throw the ball sooner or later.
They're 2nd and 15. Jones fires it over the middle, and there's Diggs with the deflected interception left sideline. 10, 5. Of course it's Diggs. Why, of course it's Diggs. Trayvon Diggs has put him up 26-21. Snap to Jones on 1st down. Deep ball down the left side. The ball is snatched out of midair at the 40. And there goes Kendrick Bourne.
Bro, we win this boosts confidence through the roof. We overcome so much in this game.
Do not get extended. Do not get your arms outside of your defender.
Play fake. Boot to the right. Looking down the field. Lamb. 10, 5. Victory. Cowboys win. The ghosts are exorcised.
The walk-off touchdown as C.D. Lamb reels it in from Dak Prescott, capping off an instant classic. 35-29 the final score up at Gillette Stadium. Back here for the first time with Isaiah Stanback and now Rob Phillips of DallasCowboys.com. And gentlemen, it was a classic because of the two coaches, Mike McCarthy, Bill Belichick, going back and forth. The Cowboys offense dominant again. Look at the numbers from Dak Prescott and what he had on the day. 445 yards, 3 touchdowns against that Patriots defense that came in with some next-level physicality. But it also was a big storyline because of the calf injury that Dak Prescott sustained on that final play of the game and the touchdown to C.D. Lamb. So this game undoubtedly had a huge impact on the 2021 season for the Cowboys. But Isaiah, I'll start with you. How big of an impact was it really when you look at the grand scheme of things?
Well, as I step back and look at it from 30,000 square feet, I believe that this team learned a lot about their character. I think that they learned a lot how to overcome turnovers. You know, they had 2 turnovers in the game. They learned how to overcome penalties. They had 12 flags during the game. And then they had, it was kind of like a rock'em sock'em type of game, right, where they were getting punched in the mouth, they punched back, and obviously it went to overtime. It was the first overtime game. So I think these guys learned a lot about themselves and how to be resilient and how to push through some of these forms of adversity.
Yeah, Anthony Brown said it on the sideline when he was mic'd up. If we win this game, the confidence that it can give us going forward, I think it did. This game had everything. 2 years ago, they go up there. The weather's terrible, low-scoring game. This game had everything. I mean, the last 2 minutes of regulation and overtime felt like a game within itself. And just watching it back, the thing that sticks out to me is just, like you said, Kyle, how dominant this offense was at this point in the season. This was Apex Mountain for them. They were never this consistently dominant and explosive offensively than they were in this game. And Isaiah spoke to some of the penalties and things that got them behind the chains. Didn't matter because they're able to get it back over and over again, and Dak was unbelievable.
And even with the offense being so successful throughout the game, it was really the defense that kept them in it. Randy Gregory had a fantastic game. Trayvon Diggs with a clutch pick 6 in that 4th quarter. How big were they to kind of keep them within striking distance?
I was there for when Diggs had the interception. It felt like something out of the natural because it was like every time, is he going to do this every single game for 17 games? Another pick? Just incredible what he was able to do. He did give up a deep play also in that game, but he keeps giving extra possessions for the Cowboys. Huge. And then Randy Gregory, when you're talking about offseason, a priority for them, re-signing him, this game was a big example. He was so disruptive off the edge, 2 sacks, a forced fumble that got them momentum back in the game. He was terrific.
And not only did the final touchdown really play a big impact in the game, but CeeDee Lamb all the way through, 9 receptions, 149 yards, 2 touchdowns, really showed he has wide receiver 1 stuff, and especially with the injury to Dak Prescott going into the bye week and then following it in week 8 against Minnesota, they needed CeeDee Lamb to step up. But not only did he step up, Amari Cooper did, helping Cooper Rush, who QB2 ended up doing QB1 things in that game against Minnesota that the Cowboys ultimately won 20-16 on the road. What did this kind of tell you about the strengths of this Dallas team? Because the wide receiver core might have had their best performance of the year.
I think this was the response that you wanted to see out of your team. Obviously, you had your QB1 who was down. Cooper Rush is stepping into the fold. Nobody understands what he can or can't do. And you had guys that stepped up and they wanted to be a part of the big plays, right? You had obviously Cooper. You had Schultz. You had, CD. All these guys wanted to step up and be that guy. And that's what you're asking for when you have somebody so dominant of a player who's missing in the locker room.
This was my favorite win of the season for the Cowboys because no Dak Prescott. They found out the night before pretty much he wasn't going to play. We talked all offseason about who's the backup quarterback, who's going to win the job. Cooper Rush did a great job. They decided they could win on the outside with their wide receivers. It might have been Amari Cooper's best game on the outside. And it was just a complete win. Championship-level teams win this type of game without their leader, without their starting quarterback. And being there in that environment, that's as loud as an environment as you can possibly be in. It's like being at a Metallica concert on the stage next to the speaker.
Cowboys with the win, improved to 6-1. Amari Cooper had 8 receptions, 122 yards, and a touchdown. And, of course, CeeDee Lamb back-ending what he did against New England with 6 receptions and 112 yards himself. It was an all-around team effort that did elevate them to what seemed to be a championship level. But just when things started looking up for the Cowboys, things started to get rocky. We talk about the toughest stretch of the regular season when we come back with more. 2021 Cowboys opportunity lost.
Snap back, they rush him. He's going to be sacked.
You got to get it going, man.
I formation, we'll give it to Gordon coming on the left side.
We are getting out hit right now. We got to really step it up. Yeah.
Prescott well protected. Deep crosser intercepted at the 40-yard line. And so they've lost twice. You have to make sure it doesn't turn into thrice. A little option play to the right. Pitches wide to Edwards-Helaire. 4-man rush. Steps up. Heaves it down. It's intercepted. Kill the clock and end the chances for the Cowboys. Back with all day to throw deep to the middle. Jackson running away. Touchdown, Las Vegas.
Gotta go back to being you, bro. I know you're frustrated. Go back to being you, man.
4:31 left in overtime from 29 yards. The kick is good, and the Raiders win.
Cowboys have now lost 3 of their last 4.
After an incredible 6-1 start, the Dallas Cowboys started to see things unravel in weeks 9 through 12 of the NFL season. It was the roughest patch for the Cowboys this year. Welcoming in for the first time, Nate Newton and Nick Eatman. Nick Eatman of DallasCowboys.com. Nate Newton, 6-time Pro Bowler, 3-time Super Bowl champion. And gentlemen, let's start with this Denver game. I mean, this is a game that early on, it looked like it was the blueprint. At least that was the buzzword around the star of how to defeat the Cowboys and what was at the time the #1 offense in the NFL. Where does this rank in terms of the most devastating losses, Nick, when you look back at the 2021 season?
Well, I think this is where it starts. I mean, obviously for regular season games, this one was the biggest loss because it was the first one in such a long time and the most surprising. You lose to Tom Brady in week 1. You expected that, but the way they played, and then they got a big winning streak. But coming off the Minnesota game without Dak, and then all of a sudden, this team's invincible. Who could beat them? And they go in, play Denver. They just weren't expecting a Teddy Bridgewater-led team to do that. But both sides of the ball, up front, they ran the ball on them, and they couldn't run the ball on Denver, and that's what was the recipe for a huge loss.
And I want to expand on that. I mean, when I'm thinking that we're going to run this ball and Dak is back, we're not going to let him throw it a lot because he's just getting back into the groove. But we tried to throw it and couldn't throw it. We tried to run it and couldn't run it. But once again, we were exposed defensively in the middle. And they rushed for, 200 and 190 yards? That's too much, man. That was And it got me to thinking, hey, man, are we something new or are we just the same old guys?
That's the biggest thing, is it was the first inkling of, okay, maybe there's a chink in the armor for this ball club. And you mentioned Dak Prescott making his return. It wasn't necessarily Dak's fault going through the stats. You look at what he did from a standpoint in that football game. Sure, he struggled for the majority of the first 3 quarters, but he did find a rhythm later on. But overall, the offense held under 300 yards, 16 points. And all 16 came in the final 4.5 minutes of that ball game. Dallas did respond, though, with a 43-3 win the next week over Atlanta before a big test. They went on the road to Arrowhead and took on the Kansas City Chiefs, a game in which that was really a golden opportunity for the Cowboys to find their rhythm and actually say, hey, we're here to stay. That Denver game was a fluke. Instead, they, without Amari Cooper, couldn't find the end zone. What did you learn about the Cowboys in that game?
Well, I think maybe the fluke might have been the Atlanta game. You know, like we talked about Denver being a fluke, and after Atlanta 43-3, you're thinking, all right, going into Kansas City, all the problems are fixed. But really, they weren't. They were exposed once again, and without Amari Cooper and everything that happened there, and CeeDee Lamb gets hurt at halftime, they weren't able to respond to that. And we knew that Patrick Mahomes would figure it out. And the defense played pretty well against them, 19-9. You'll take 19 points at Arrowhead.
Against Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, and that Kansas City offense.
But they couldn't score at all. And I have a feeling Nate might address this too, but Chris Jones from the Chiefs, he was pretty dang good in that game. And Connor McGovern was starting there at that left guard. Him and be honest, they couldn't handle him inside.
All week long on all the podcasts that would listen to me, I said, fellas, it's a guy in the middle named Chris Jones. He hasn't crunked it up. He's been playing all over the field, but he's going to lock in on our guard, left guard, and center, and it could be a hectic day. And it turned out to be a terrible day. He came up with 2.5 sacks, 3 sacks, and he just disrupted our whole run game. And that's when I was fully aware that we had a big chink in the armor. It was in the middle of our offensive line.
And not only with that, but the offensive struggles really continued going into the Thanksgiving game against the Las Vegas Raiders. Chris Jones was a problem against Kansas City. It really felt like the entire front seven from the Raiders was a problem, with Max Crosby leading the way. But what played the biggest role in the losing streak, and maybe not a losing streak, but those 3 out of 4 games right in the middle of that 2021 schedule that provided the Cowboys so much issues?
You know, I think that they don't have fast starts, and I think you got to put that on Kellen Moore and the offense there and preparing. Short week, Thanksgiving, hey, that happens, but the other team is dealing with it as well. But it happened too many times. Against some of the lesser teams, they were able to get away with it. But against teams like even the Raiders, the Chiefs, you slow start, and then even though they come back late, it's too little too late.
It was like molasses in the wintertime, boy, trying to come out of a maple tree. It just ain't going to happen. You know what I'm saying?
That's some imagery.
So I'm just saying you got to warm up the tree and get it going. But what bothered me more than anything, man, is Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb. We couldn't get the ball to him quick enough, fast enough. We didn't take advantage of Tony Pollard in getting him outside. Zeke was hurt. So we had to take advantage of the weapons we had, and it was outside. Our tight ends wasn't blocking worth for nothing. So it was just a bad scene. I think Amari kind of missed the game or two there.
He missed the Raiders game,
yes,
the Chiefs game as well. You know, there's been a lot of talk about what's going to happen there this season, but if you want to see what life is like without Amari Cooper, just go look at those 2 games right there. Chiefs, Raiders, he didn't play in the game. You know, I mean, the stats show that when he's out there, Dak's numbers have always been better. I don't know if the Cowboys front office is listening, but I'm just saying.
Listen to this guy. Listen to this guy.
Be careful what you wish for. Saving money is one thing, but you can figure out the way to restructure some things. But life without Amari Cooper hasn't been good for the Cowboys the last few years.
Not at all. And you really look at some of the other issues that really had kind of compounded. Offensive line rotation, penalties, poor offense, and then, of course, the absence of Amari Cooper and the slow starts playing a big role. But Dallas, they needed a rebound, and they definitely got one. Let's see how they got one when we come back right after the break. Welcome back to Dallas Cowboys 2021 opportunity loss. Back here with David Hellman, Barry Church. I'm Kyle Yeomans. The Cowboys had just lost 3 of their last 4 games, and they needed a hero to emerge. That hero's name, Dan Quinn and his young, talented defense as the Cowboys rattled off 4 straight wins following the rough patch of the season. Started with New Orleans 27-17, then Washington on the road at FedEx Field 27-20, and then the New York Giants, of course, at MetLife Stadium 21-6 were the scores in those games. But it wasn't a normal Cowboys win, or at least over the last half decade or so, where it was the offense leading the way. It was really the defense that took charge. Dave, when you were entering 2021, could you have anticipated that the Cowboys defense would have let a streak like this?
No. Just point blank. What, they had 12 takeaways in 3 games? I mean, all 3 of those games felt like carbon copies of each other. And honestly, my takeaway from that stretch, I'm going to remember it for a while, is if you think back to in the moment, we were like, well, they're winning. 4-game win streaks are good, right? How can you be mad about this? But on the other side, offense looks terrible. Well, defense can only do so much. And wouldn't you know it, that was the theme for why their season ended.
Yeah, I'm with you 100% on this, Dave. And, you know, going into these last couple streaks, there was no way that I thought this defense would be able to perform the way it did. And they highlighted and they basically, you know, dragged this team along. I mean, Dak Prescott and his offense, you know, some people say it was a struggle. Some people say, you know, they were just in a little bit of a funk. But whatever the case may be, this defense led this team through this win streak, you know, taking the football away at an extremely high rate.
They had more interceptions in December than some Cowboy teams in recent history have had.
I was part of that team. I was part of one of those teams.
Like, I remember.
That didn't have anywhere close to that number.
No.
But then you go back to Week 16 and going against Washington for the second time in 14 days. Now, this time they come to you. They bring their own benches to your stadium. It's a whole social media deal. But ultimately, the Cowboys were the one that put the pounding on Washington this time around. 56-14 was the final score. But you really feel like it set the tone for an expectation of complete wins from there on out. But ultimately, it ended up just being false hope.
Yeah, and I think it's, again, it ties into the frustration from the month before. You're winning these games, but your offense isn't doing it. I think people got so excited to see them break out. Maybe you lose sight of the fact that half of Washington's roster was sitting out with COVID-19. That just kind of conveniently gets swept aside once you finally see the offense stringing together these great plays. But, I mean, the results speak for themselves. When they went up against better teams, they weren't able to replicate it.
Yeah, I think, you know, a lot of us were, you know, prisoners of the moment. You know, I was one of those guys. When I saw that game, I thought, oh, this is it. You know, our defense has finally come together. Offense as well. We're having this complete game, like you said. Special teams got in.
When you see, like, again, going back to a previous segment, like, when you see a team score 56 points in the NFL, that's not normal. It's not. And, I mean, it was easy to get swept away.
Yeah, defenses were feasting on lesser quarterbacks. But at the time, prisoners of the moment, like I said, I thought for sure this was a complete team, complete roster. We're going to go far. We're going to do things. But Arizona was right around the corner.
You're exactly right. And we're going to talk about that Arizona game coming up in a minute. But right there, after losing 3 of 4, Dallas jumped to an impressive 11-4 record. And with that win against Washington, clinched the NFC East. But with that positive momentum, Dallas again had a chance at that benchmark, including the Arizona Cardinals. How did they fare? We'll tell you right after this. With the win against Washington in Week 16, the Cowboys already had the NFC East divisional title in hand. So that allowed a benchmark opportunity as the Arizona Cardinals, already playoff bound in their own right, came to AT&T Stadium for another shot for the Cowboys to prove that they belonged against the best in the NFC. Instead, it just provided a little bit more doubt.
3-0 Cardinals, and they're 4th and goal at the 1 and going for it. Murray's under center. Murray peels around to the left, throws it in the end zone, man's wide open.
If we are in coverage and you got a piece, hang on to your piece.
Snap back, throws a deep fade left side. Oh, caught! What a catch! Touchdown, Wesley.
I'm going to use my legs. Let's be ready to scramble. Be ready for some off-schedule, you know what I mean?
2nd and 11, Prescott under pressure, runs out of the pocket. Stumbles forward, fumbles, and the Cardinals recover. 38 yards. It's Arizona 25, Dallas 14.
Prescott inside fake, rolls left and keeps, looking, nobody open, throws it in the end zone, touchdown to make it a field goal difference. Murray, option play, coming left, pitch to Edmonds again. They didn't learn anything on the other side. Down, the ball came out. Cowboys bench is claiming a fumble, but he was clearly down.
No!
His knee was off the ground. Oh, the ball was out. I think it's fumble. Did McCarthy throw the flag?
He doesn't have one to throw. He's out of timeout. Out of timeout.
Oh my gosh, he cannot challenge.
Yep.
Cowboys need to hold him and get the ball. 2:04 left. They hand. No, Murray keeps it. Running left, avoids Gregory and slides with a first down. And so the result of this is Arizona will be 11-5. Dallas is going to fall from the 2nd seed to the 4th seed.
Breaker at home for the Dallas Cowboys as they fell 25-22 to the Arizona Cardinals. It was a 22-7 deficit that really sunk the Cowboys. Another slow start. We mentioned that earlier in the show, but the fourth quarter comeback did feel like it had an opportunity to come to fruition, but ultimately fell just short. Back with Isaiah Stanback and Rob Phillips, I'm Kyle Yeomans. And guys, this was just one of those things that slow starts were a common theme throughout the season, but was Week 17 just really a foreshadowing as to what is to come, or what was to come for the playoffs moving forward?
Yeah, I think the playoff game, we'll talk about it later, was a kind of a carbon copy of this game because you mentioned the slow starts. They couldn't get anything going until late, and they weren't able to run the ball like they needed to in the game. 17 carries for 45 yards, 20 by Dak Prescott led the team, and a lot of the talk out of that game was, well, Isaiah, the Cardinals disguise their coverages, and we're able to do a lot of things, to throw off Dak in the passing game. When you can't run the ball, then you're in obvious passing situations, and I think that lack of balance is what hurt the Cowboys not only in this game, but in games that they lost, including the playoffs.
I believe that they just never got their footing. Yeah, I feel like they just never got off the ground. They lost the turnover battle. They lost the time of possession battle. They lost the first down battle. I mean, every category that matters, they were behind. And then you compound that with the fact that they allowed Budda Baker and Chandler Jones to simply be dominant on that side of the ball. On the flip side, you mentioned it already, couldn't run the ball for anything. Couldn't have an effective running game, passing game. Couldn't protect anybody. Those guys were just pressuring Dak all day long. So it just seemed like they were playing a team that knew exactly how good they were, and that they just weren't ready to handle that matchup.
Another category that was in the negative zone for the Cowboys was 10 penalties for 88 yards. It was just another game where the most penalized team in the NFL had problems there. Why were penalties not just a problem on the field, Isaiah, but off the field as well?
I mean, these guys, the emotions got into it, right? That's something that we talked about all offseason, emotional intelligence and whether or not they were going to be able to handle it in those tight games. And unfortunately, they weren't. It showed up, it reared its ugly head once again. Penalties have been a problem all year long.
It really had been a problem for the Cowboys, and it even compounded really in that Week 17 game against the Arizona Cardinals, but also in the playoff game, which, like you said, we'll talk about a little bit later on as well. There was one final game in the regular season against the Philadelphia Eagles. It was one of which that helped break a ton of records. As you see some of the numbers behind us, the Cowboys take down Philadelphia. 51-26 was that score, and it was important for the Cowboys to rest a couple of starters, Rob, and kind of get that rest and that health going into the playoff run, but ultimately, like we already know, didn't turn out for the Cowboys. But what exactly went wrong for the Cowboys in the wild card round against the San Francisco 49ers? We'll talk about that and how the season came to a close right after this.
I submit there is no greater playoff rivalry than Dallas-San Francisco.
No! They don't respect us! We don't respect them! They want to talk physicality? Let's show what the physicality is all about!
Snap to Garoppolo, throws it over the middle, caught. Oh, Samuel running away. Mitchell with a great block from Juszczyk, strolls to the pylon.
25, I'll make it work. I'll make it work.
Snap back to Prescott, four-man rush. He's sacked. He runs up out of there's holding. He throws it over the middle. It's caught at the 45, but this is going to be holding Dallas.
Out of the way. Let's move on. Let's go now. We've done stopping ourselves. The only ones that can stop us now. Watch this.
And back at the 19. Four-man rush. He throws it out, intercepted. Mitchell in motion and hands the ball off to Samuel coming around to the right side. They block it up. 20, 10, streaking in. Deebo Samuel.
I want to see what the real man is. That's what I want to see. I want to see the real man that's going to own this. That's going to own every play.
He skitters to his right. He throws. Intercepted by Anthony Brown. Anthony Brown with a huge play. Snap on third down, looking right. Under pressure, good block from Martin. He strolls left, he runs in.
Wow.
They are going to get their hands on the ball again, the Cowboys.
Wow.
For Dallas, 32 seconds, they're 80 yards away. Looking, throwing deep middle, caught at the 30. Wilson laterals to Lamb on the left side. He got out of bounds at the 40. Prescott in the gun, runs up the middle to the 30. To the 25 and slides. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Did he spike it in time? Didn't get it spiked in time.
They haven't said anything official. Now again, this could.
That's the end of the game.
Oh wow. There you go.
Well, that's a disappointment.
Despite having home field advantage, a relatively healthy roster, and lofty expectations, the Cowboys' playoff run comes to a premature end in the wild card round. 23-17 was the final score. San Francisco enters AT&T Stadium and rips out the playoff life from the Dallas Cowboys and ending the 2021 season. Back here with Nick Eatman and Nate Newton. Gentlemen, it was a disappointment. You heard it from Brad Sham himself at the end of the call. It was a disappointment. The Cowboys could not overcome a slow start to get the win and ultimately get to the lofty expectations and the lofty goals that they had set for themselves. But you guys have both been around this team for quite some time. You've had great years. You've had also awful losses along the way. But where does this one rank in terms of the biggest disappointment in a playoff game?
Well, from a playoff standpoint, I mean, obviously this was the one. I mean, we're saying it here: opportunity lost, and that's what it was. It was a lost opportunity. I think though, for me, you know, I didn't want to see it all year long, and I didn't. The writing was on the wall. I kind of overlooked it. I think we wanted to see it so bad. We wanted to see this team to make it there, but they told us exactly what they were all year long. They were undisciplined at the worst times with penalties. They had slow starts. They couldn't stop the run when they really needed to, and then they couldn't get back in and just get over the hump. And you know, when you face the team better than them, they weren't good enough, and that's what happened.
You know what? We ain't got enough time to go through all. You covered the penalties. They exposed us with the penalties. We gave them the ball. When you got a bully, if I'm bragging all week that I'm gonna pop you in your mouth, and the first thing you do when you see me, you don't hit me in my mouth, I'm going to beat you down. Hey, man, here go the ball. Y'all taking a run down the field. You can't do that. You can't let them. The only thing they had was a running game, and we gave them the running game, and they smacked us with it, and we did not answer. So now you expose our penalties. You expose that we were weak up the middle of the offense, weak up the middle of the defense. We know we only had to stop Deebo Samuels. We did not do that. Come on, man. The quarterback gave us our interception at the end. That should have been the interception to close out the game. But instead, come on, man. You don't do that.
It got off to the worst start for the Cowboys overall. 7 plays, 75 yards. It took just 4 minutes for Kyle Shanahan's offense to drive down the field and really silence what was a ruckus AT&T Stadium playoff crowd. But who is to blame for the slow start in this game? Is it the coaching staff? Is it the players? It's a playoff game, home field advantage, but they still came out flat.
Well, I mean, it's hard to know who to blame. So when you don't know, you're sitting there behind the scenes. It starts at the top. It always has to start at the top, and especially when the head coach comes out and says that he didn't feel like that maybe they were nervous. He took that back and said they had some angst, maybe anxiety. That still goes on the coaching staff. That still goes on the coaches getting them ready to play and figuring out where. And I'll say this: if your head coach knows that, and he knows, I don't know if I like what I'm seeing in their eyes. Maybe defense is the best place. Maybe in his mind, he's like, are we gonna go out and execute on offense? They didn't execute on offense anyway. So I don't know if I agree with you on that part, because I don't think they're gonna get the ball to start the game and do anything, because they didn't for the first quarter and a half.
And had a second chance. With a block punt or a bad punt. Let me say this, fellas. I don't care what we do defensively. It's still going to always come down to our offense. All our stock is in our offense. All our money is in our offense. So no matter what happens, you have to believe that your offense is going to get going, man. We screwed this up from the beginning. When you, 2 Super Bowl coaches, not one, we have 2 Super Bowl coaches that should have been able to catch on, hey, man, something here is not right. How do we shake it up to get it right if we can get it right?
There are a lot of, I guess, opinions around Cowboys Nation and around this team of how 2021 will be remembered. But the fact of the matter is you were NFC East champs, a 6-win improvement from 2020, but 2021 will always be an opportunity lost, and that's because of the San Francisco game. But what is next for the Dallas Cowboys? Where do they go from here? We can grasp that, and maybe they can grasp the next opportunity that's at hand when we return right after this.
The 2021 Dallas Cowboys Year-End Special, presented by Miller Lite, is brought to you by Dr. Pepper. All the flavor you deserve without the sugar. New Dr. Pepper Zero Sugar. Ford, built for Texas, built for you. And by Miller Lite, the only beer of the Dallas Cowboys. It's Miller time.
In the end, a 2021 season full with promise ends in disappointment and an opportunity lost for the Dallas Cowboys. Now, plenty of questions remain on the docket for this front office moving into the offseason. They'll have the 24th pick in the upcoming draft. For our entire DallasCowboys.com crew, I'm Kyle Yeomans. We'll see you next year.